Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Eagles cut things a little closer versus the Chiefs this time around, but KC still couldn't topple Philly. Also, the Lions offense went nuclear against the Bears. And speaking of the Bears, things are not looking good so far for Ben Johnson and Chicago.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
A Super Bowl rematch that certainly did not feel super, but the Philadelphia Eagles did come out with a 20-17 win over the Kansas City Chiefs. The first time Patrick Mahomes has lost 3 games in a row, I believe, since he was in high school. Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles joins me now. And Lou, this Philadelphia team, I would say, has not looked like the team we saw at the end of last year, but they beat 2 quality opponents, I think, and now sit here at 2-0. What do you take away from this game in particular?
Yeah, I think it's that this team is just so clutch and battle-tested in big environments, big moments, that while they're figuring things out on defense with new personnel, while they're trying to get this passing game, I don't want to say back on track, but at least at the point where they're
somewhere near the tracks would be nice.
Right, exactly. They're still finding ways to win in Arrowhead against a desperate Kansas City Chiefs team that, like you said, has never been 0-2 with Pat Mahomes. To win that game, for the defense to look that good in that situation, I think is impressive. So while, yes, I am a little bit concerned about the passing attack and their new play caller, I think through 2 weeks has not been all that impressive. For them to still, considering the circumstances, win these games early in the season is all that matters, because in September, we know how weird NFL football can be. And if we learned anything from last year when the Eagles were 2-2 to start, who you are in September isn't always who you're going to be in November, December, and January.
I was going to bring that up, Lou, because I remember having a conversation with you early in the season last year. I don't remember when it was exactly, but we were like, is Nick Sirianni on the hot seat? What's going on here? Because remember, the way that the 2023 season ended, there were questions about this team. Of course, going and winning a Super Bowl and doing it against Patrick Mahomes when you blow the doors off the Chiefs is going to answer a lot of those questions. But they had some slow starts last year. There's a talent difference this year, though, right? They lost a lot of pieces from that Super Bowl team. So how confident are you that they can make that same sort of let's get the train on the tracks and moving in the right direction adjustment this season?
After today, I'm actually just as confident, because you're right, they lost a lot of talent on defense, but the guys that are replacing those players looked phenomenal. Moro Ujoma is replacing Milton Williams. He had a big sack in the fourth quarter. Yeah. Drew Makuba is replacing C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He had the game-winning interception. He had a sack. He had a big 3rd-and-1 stop that led to another turnover. You look at Josh Uche.
That ball did go right off Travis Kelce's hand.
That's fair, but he made a big play. And Zadarius Smith and Josh Uche look good on the edge, replacing Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham. Jahad Campbell looks great, replacing Nakobe Dean. So you're right. Again, in a vacuum, there are definitely issues with this football team we didn't have at the end of last year. But I think I'm more confident in who they are right now through 2 games than I was last season. So I don't think there's any hot seat talk as of now. This team knows who they are and lean into their identity, but that doesn't mean they don't need to improve, because you can't have 101 passing yards a game and expect to win that way. There's a middle ground between that and being, they're never going to be a 300-plus passing yard offense, but there is a middle ground.
Jalen Hurts, you mentioned that passing game. He has 253 passing yards through 2 weeks, Louis. And yeah. You know, we talked about this last year when we did our crossover in the playoffs and some of these shows that we did here for Locked On Sports Today. The passing game was never really consistent or elite last year the way that the talent might say that it should be. Are there answers here other than just like, let's say, Saquon Barkley cook?
I don't know. Like right now, see, unlike last year, I don't think any of this is Jalen Hurts' fault. If you look at some of these passing concepts, I have not been overly impressed with Kevin Patullo, who's the new play caller replacing Kellen Moore. I think you're right with the elite personnel they have. You should not be throwing 101 yards. Now, there's been an acceptance point I've come to with Jalen Hurts in this passing offense. They're going to be up and down. They'll have some big performances, but a lot of them will look like what we've seen the last 2 weeks, and they'll still win football games. But the play calling's got to be better. They had no answer for the blitz today against Kansas City, except for the one big play to Devontae Smith. So I'm less worried about yes, and I'm more worried about the play calling than I am Jalen as of now, because regardless of the numbers, I think Hurts has been a plus in both games.
You mentioned that blitz issue. That was the big question going into last year, right? Can Kellen Moore, as opposed to the staff the year before, and Nick Sirianni, I think, had a bigger hand in what was going on in 2023 as well. Can he deal with pressure? Well, Kellen Moore, they found some more answers last year. If they're back to, hey, we don't have great answers here, like that's a problem if the coaching is really the issue here.
Yeah, that's why they won the Super Bowl, because they had answers against Spags' pressure. Jalen Hurts picked that apart.
Kellen Moore, a head coaching job.
But you put it perfectly. In 2023, Nick Sirianni kind of had his hands on the offense more, and Brian Johnson was a new play caller. They are kind of back to that same kind of setup. I want to give Patullo the benefit of the doubt. It's only been 2 games. He's never called plays before. But you're right. Through 2 games, it does give me kind of PTSD to 2023. So we'll see. The season's young, but yeah, it's not off to a great start on offense.
You can stay up to date all year on the Philadelphia Eagles by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Eagles on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, Jared Goff was cooking against the Bears. Before we get to that, the Chiefs aren't too happy with Travis Kelce. The NFL season is finally here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. The Chiefs lost a close contest to the Eagles yesterday afternoon, and a decent chunk of the blame, I don't even have a Taylor Swift joke for this, it falls on Travis Kelce.
Kansas City Chiefs start the season 0-2. First time in Patrick Mahomes' career, he has 3 consecutive losses in his NFL career. Lot to talk about when we get to Locked On Chiefs later, but the reality of this situation is Patrick Mahomes can still do things, doesn't have the greatest deep ball, showed a couple of times against the Eagles, hit a deep ball late to Tyquan Thornton. It was too little too late. And that's the problem. The rest of the wide receivers really didn't do much. Juju Smith-Schuster didn't do much. Hollywood Brown had a couple of good catches, a couple of good plays. Tyquan Thornton had a couple of other good plays. But outside of that, obviously the biggest mistake and the thing that cost Kansas City a touchdown and maybe even potentially the win, Travis Kelce pops the ball up when he's getting ready to cross the goal line, gets intercepted by the Philadelphia Eagles. They run it back, get a fourth down conversion with the tush push for a touchdown, take a 2-score lead. Kansas City could not catch up.
Elsewhere in the NFL, the Cowboys walked off the Giants in OT.
3 big takeaways from a Cowboys win that they probably didn't deserve to win. Hi, I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and here are the 3 takeaways that I mentioned before in this game, in which there was over 1,000 yards of offense, almost 1,000 yards of offense between the two teams, and that's my first takeaway. The Cowboys' defense was atrocious for most of this game. They have got to find a way to mix up their coverages. It seems like they were playing almost exclusively zone coverage again, and the Giants' offense, which had no business eating them alive, truly ate this Cowboys defense for almost the entirety of the game. Number 2, the Cowboys' rushing attack has started to find its footing in the second half of these games. It was a little bit touch and go early on, but Jamal Williams finished with almost 100 yards, a couple of huge runs as the Cowboys' run game starts to take off. And finally, the Cowboys have got to find a way to start quicker in these early noon games. They've struggled with this for many years. They've got to find a way to change that. There's lots to break down in this huge 40-37 win by the Cowboys. Make sure you check us out on the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
The Patriots squeezed past the Dolphins.
An absolutely crazy game down in Miami. Special teams touchdowns, missed extra points, 2 gigantic sacks late in this game, one for Harold Landry, one for Milton Williams to end the game as Miami was trying to drive down. I mean, this was just absolutely nuts. You had Achane stepping out of bounds. What looked like to be the game-winning touchdown doesn't happen. I mean, this was just a crazy, typical Miami, New England game down in Miami. Drake May was fantastic. We'll talk about that and more on Locked On Patriots, live post-game coming up in a little bit. Again, check us out, Locked On Patriots. We'll talk soon.
So it turns out we don't have to cancel the 2025 Detroit Lions season after a Week 1 loss in Green Bay. New offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Looked a little bit different in Week 2, a 52-21 drubbing of the Chicago Bears with, that Ben Johnson guy over as the new head coach there. Matt Derry from Locked On Lions joins me now. And Matt, The crowd at the end, Detroit got a little feisty with their old offensive coordinator with some of the chants that we don't have to repeat here. But this has to be a get right spot that Detroit desperately needed.
Oh, Pete, they really did. And it was a totally different team from a week ago. And credit to the Packers for how much they dominated the Lions at Lambeau Field, because in week 2, the Lions put it to the Bears. And like you said, the Ben Johnson stuff, I don't endorse end of the game with the F Ben Johnson stuff. I think that's a little much. But with that being said, the Lions had a little extra mustard to put on the sandwich today because they ran it up. They did. And they had an opportunity to kick a field goal, make it 48-21, take the starters out. They went for it on a 4th down. Ben Johnson was asked about after the game, said that's what they do in Detroit. He didn't see any issue with it. But a 5th Jared Goff touchdown pass, 3 of them to St. Brown. Goff leaps into the crowd. You could tell they wanted this one, and they wanted to kind of punish their former OC.
Is the reality in the middle with Detroit between week 1 and week 2, or is this more about, the week 1 performance, more about what you think of Green Bay at this point?
No, I think the Packers definitely right now look like a force, and I think the Lions have got to match that. I think we'll know something in the next few weeks on this Detroit team, because next week they got to go to Baltimore for Monday Night Football. And I'm not going to say that's going to be as tough as going to Lambeau or it's going to be that same result. But what I did like about Detroit today was they got back to doing what they do best, which is pound the rock, 180 yards on the ground. The offensive line was really good, which they weren't in week 1. And they gelled. You could just tell they were more organized. They were more prepared today. And I think some of it had to be, some of it was being at home. And the other thing was they protected Goff. He had time to throw. And everybody seemed to have a little bit extra pep in their step. And the defense today, 4 sacks, some hurry, some pressures on Caleb Williams. And that's how you got to beat the Bears.
Yeah, much easier to protect when that Micah Parsons guy not on the other side of the field here, Matt. Let's just travel back in time a little bit, because there were some clips of the new offensive coordinator, John Morton, and new defensive coordinator, Kelvin Shepard, going around from last week that I even saw some Lions fans on socials going, hey, what's going on here? What did you make of the salty nature of some of those responses that this coaching staff brought?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that the expectations here are to win. The expectations here, which have never been like this in 40, 50 years, are we need to get to the Super Bowl. And so when you build that kind of bar and you raise it that high, when you have a clunker like you do in week 1 and you get dominated within the division in week 1 by a rival, flares are going to go off, sirens are going to go off. So I think what the Lions did was they said, all right, hear all that noise out there, let's ignore it. We know how good we can be. We know John Morton was on the staff before and had input on our offense just years ago. And they know that Kelvin Shepard can call a defense and has been groomed for the last few years by Aaron Glenn. So those guys got to work. You saw, like I said, more energy. I think an opportunity for the Lions to kind of show everybody that last week was a bit fluky and that they can play much better. There's still so much talent on the field. Laporta had a great first game, and today was barely spoken for. And they scored 52 points. So there's a lot of guys that can play here, and I think they wanted to prove a point, and they did.
How much of this is the Dan Campbell ethos at work, and how much, I think maybe more importantly, how much of this is Dan Campbell like we saw a couple of years ago? Hey, the offense is not clicking the way that we wanted to. I need to take a bigger role here. Hey, the defense isn't doing exactly what we needed to. I need to step in here, because he doesn't call offensive plays. He doesn't call defensive plays, but we know there is an actual impact on the field, because when they went on that streak a couple of years ago offensively, he was the guy who was the architect of that offense.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, Pete, is that he kind of rallied the troops, which is what he does best. They have not lost 2 games in a row. And we're talking about the Detroit Lions here, who have done a lot of losing in their history.
Yeah, sure.
They haven't lost 2 games in a row since October of 2022. So that streak was on the line today. You knew the Bears would be fired up to come in and didn't look all bad in week 1. The Bears probably could have beaten the Vikings in that game. So Lions made a statement here. I think it was just about Campbell getting the guys together and saying, we did not do our fundamentals well in week 1. We got beat in our own game, like you and I talked about last week, and went out and kind of put their force into it today, and the crowd helped. And it also helped that, Caleb Williams was throwing it to the other team. That always helps too.
We've seen now, Matt, the Packers play 2, the Lions play 2, the Eagles play 2. Any difference in how you view those 3 teams, which I think were the consensus 3 best teams in the NFC heading into the season?
Oh, well, you have to say Green Bay's been the best so far. I just think they've been so complete and so physical, and you can just see the improvement with the quarterback. So that's a positive. Philly's going to be Philly. I'm not worried about them, and I think the Lions, like I said, I mean, it was a clunker and a swing and a miss, and Sunday was a home run. So what will they look like next Monday night in Baltimore? That's a tough place to play. Last 2 times the Lions have played the Ravens, both losses. Both one was at the gun, it was a choke job, and the other one was a butt whooping in Baltimore. So let's see how the Lions do on the road in Baltimore. And I mean, there'll be a lot of people picking against them again, and maybe they use that as motivation.
Stay up to date all year on the Detroit Lions by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Lions on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Bears are already taking a hard look in the mirror just 2 games into Ben Johnson's tenure. The Chicago Bears once again won the offseason and have not won since. 0-2 to start the 2025 NFL season. This one, a 30-point loss at the hands of Ben Johnson's former team. Lauren Cox joins me now from Locked On Bears. And Lauren, this team has been able to get out to pretty good starts in the first 2 games and been unable to sustain it. What do you think that's about?
Yeah, I think it's partially that Ben Johnson is good at scripting the opening plays of a game and that they can execute that at a pretty high level. But then beyond that, it's the inability to hold up. I think I see from a coaching standpoint, a defense that gets gassed by the fourth quarter and doesn't look like they're going 100% full effort, full bore out there. They've had some injuries on that side of the ball that certainly don't help. And an offense that once they get a little bit of something going, then the self-inflicted wounds start to add up a little bit when they have to get out of that script. Penalties, sacks, mistakes, inaccurate throws here and there, lack of a running game, and then you're behind on the scoreboard, and it all just builds on itself.
To whom do we assign the most amount of blame here? Because it is a blame pie. There's blame to go around everywhere, but who gets the biggest slice of that pie right now in Chicago? Dare I say, humble pie?
Yeah, so I think in the first game, it felt like Caleb Williams maybe got the biggest slice, but in this game, anytime you give up over 50 points, it really does point back to defensive coordinator Dennis Allen just unable to find answers for the Lions. And this was really from the start. You know, last week against the Vikings, they were decent in the first half and took J.J. McCarthy till the fourth quarter to really break things free. But from the first drive and beyond, the Lions just marched down the field way too easily on this Bears defense. And that was even before Jalen Johnson was re-injured and T.J. Edwards was re-injured. So they were as close to full strength as they could be at this stage of the process. And it still didn't feel like they were good enough. And it feels like there's more that a coaching staff can do to try and squeeze a little bit more out of this group.
Are we leaning a little too heavy on sort of preseason priors to not loop Ryan Poles into that mix?
No, he's absolutely a part of that mix for sure. And it's this chicken and the egg question of like, are the players not good enough or are they not getting put in a position to be successful well enough? You know, like a veteran safety like Kevin Byard's in his 10th year and he's out of position on multiple touchdowns. And is that a veteran player who's all of a sudden gotten bad? But it's not even a physical thing, right? It wasn't too slow. He just misread the play multiple times. So is he just not seeing the field well anymore, or is he not being coached up and communicated to properly to know what to do on those plays? That's kind of the $1 million question right now in Chicago.
Okay, so when we talked preseason, you, I think, set the expectations bar lower than maybe most Bears fans or some other Chicago media, because I think you had a reasonable expectation of the progress a 5-win team can reasonably make in one offseason. By that standard, it seems like they've still performed below even those expectations, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Through 2 games, it's been below where they were even supposed to be on a more moderate expectation level. I tend to give them some benefit of the doubt that it is the first 2 games of a new offense and a new defense, and maybe we wanted it to all work faster and be clicked, and maybe it was fair to expect this highly touted coaching staff with experienced, well-known guys that they should have produced better, but it does take time for this to go. It was also 2 divisional games, and we know things that happen in divisional games aren't always perfectly reflective of how they'll do against non-division opponents. They don't have as much tape on and doesn't have as much tape on them. So I think there's some reasons to say like, hey, this guy isn't completely falling in Chicago, but they need to turn things around really, really quickly, or else the patience is going to run out ASAP.
The sky, it may not be falling, but if someone needs to get out the umbrella, it might be Caleb Williams. What has he not done this year, or what has the offense been unable to do with Caleb Williams at quarterback? Because I don't want to put it all on him. That you thought would change or could change this year?
Yeah, we thought we'd see Caleb get into a rhythm more quickly and stay in rhythm more throughout the game. I think there was improvement from week 1 to week 2. It's baby steps, but it's definitely the positive direction and not the negative direction with the two. But we're just seeing a couple of rushed throws and like inaccuracy on passes that like that's supposed to be the easy part. Like the question was, can he go through his progression fast enough? Can he process what he's seeing on the field, find the open receiver? Like that's the hard part. And then he'll get the ball to him, no problem. And we're seeing the first half of that go easily. He's finding the open guys. He's just not always being able to hit them with proper footwork, proper timing. And some of that feels like as they get more reps, it should, in theory, clean up easier than, he can't read the coverage, or he does not going through his progression quick enough. Like the hard stuff seems to be making progress. And then offensive line issues and a bunch of penalties have made it that much more difficult.
And finally, we give the Colts and their fans a bit of a hard time. So how about some positive news to close things out? Indianapolis has started the season 2-0, led by Daniel Jones, of all quarterbacks. The last time that the Colts started the season 2-0 was 2009, the year they went to the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. It only took the heroics of Jones, one of the derpiest signal calls in the league for most of his career, to push Indy to 2-0 for the first time since the Sheriff was in town. This is phenomenal stuff here. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new